Welcome to Rad Chat. I'm your host, Brandilynn, and today we have another amazing episode. I have my very special guest, Morgan, who's a mother and a blogger, and I've known her since high school. So thank you so much for zooming in with me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And it's so crazy because it's like we've known each other since high school, but like it's been years since we've like seen each other or actually like in-depth talk. So I'm so excited for this.
Yes, yes, time flies.
It really does. It really does. Like, I was thinking that I've been in California like almost 7 to 8 years, and I'm like, holy shit, that's wild.
That's a long time. I didn't even realize it's been that long.
It's been so long. Yeah, it's crazy. But this is about you. So I always just kind of start of like how I know the guests, and like I said, we know each other from high school. So my perception was like we had Italian class together that I for sure remember because that Italian class was unforgettable. Like Miss I was like so cute and like tried her best, but it was a mix of like sophomores and juniors and seniors, and the seniors are already checked out and they were wild. So the class was so wild in my opinion.
Yes. I love Miss I. Like I still talk to her, but I felt so bad because like honestly looking back on it, we were like a handful. Like
Such a handful.
Dylan and Lenny and oh my gosh, I'm like just those two alone, like I'm like I can't.
So much. I just remember being in like the corner by the chalkboards. And I would just sit there like I think I was just like the youngest of everybody. So I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you honestly like you were probably smart for like hanging back there because like I just remember like I don't even it was like Lenny throwing something. I was getting hit with stuff. Like they were just crazy. Like they were
Crazy.
insane. And I'm like, how is this even happening right now? Like how has like a principal or like security guard has not been like called down to our class? I mean they may
Right.
have, I can't remember,
She put
but
up with a lot of shit though. Like she was pretty cool and she would get mad sometimes, like put her foot down, but
like reasonably so. Like I was like she let us rock for a little bit and then we were like just absurd and she finally was
absurd.
like, all right guys,
Let's get
like
it together.
chill out.
But I have to say, I liked that it was so crazy because I also like I'm Italian, but I'm like a bad Italian. Like I do not know how to pronounce. I can't roll my R's. Like my speech. So then being in the class, I'm like, I don't know how to say this shit, and I'm embarrassed because I'm like the young one when there's like seniors in the class, and I'm like, oh, don't call on me. Just like keep being crazy.
I hated that. Like when she would call on us and she'd be like, all right, what does this mean in Italian? I was like, uh I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not
Please
sure.
go on. My anxiety. I'm like, oh, I'm having a panic attack.
Right? It was so nerve-wracking, but that was just a fun class. So I feel like that's my biggest memory because we were like in that class together. And then of course just like seeing each other in the hallways or like mutual friends, people we knew. But
Yeah.
my biggest memory of. And I also knew like you were always super involved in high school. Like I feel like you were the person, in my opinion, you were the person that was kind of friends with a lot of different people. And so I just would always see you around or like involved in activities or sports. So that was always my memory.
I love that. Honestly, like one thing that I do pride myself on is that like I never wanted to be like oh my gosh, I swear, the weather today. Like I never wanted to be like one of those people that was just I dedicated myself to like the popular group or like you know what I'm saying? Like, I was never like I don't know, like I just liked who I liked. Like I was one of those people that I just like I loved hanging out with people that just made me feel good and like people that made me feel comfortable. So like that actually makes me really happy to hear that because like I never got to see like you never get to see yourself through somebody else's eyes or like hear like what people thought of you in high school. And like I was always like, you know, I wanted to always be remembered like as somebody who was kind and like was friends with everybody and I wasn't just that person that was like, oh, I'm only gonna hang out with these people because they're cool. Like I was like, nah, like I like you. You got cool colored hair. Like, hey, like you got a good vibe to you. Like, or hey, like we're in sports together and you're nice to me. So like, you know what I'm saying? So like I like that. I like that, like that's how you viewed me.
Yeah, no, I definitely did like feel like that was for sure how you were portrayed because I feel like you dated like popular people or like people that were like in popular cliques, but then like you would hear like that she was friends with like another group and you're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool," because like those groups would never because if we should also preface for people listening, our high school that we went to was very, very cliquey and it was like there was for sure the cool kids, the nerds, or the not so cool kids. Or we had people called the Breakfast Club. We had mean people. We had like the skaters or the drug addicts. Like we've had all those cliques, and like you were kind of put in a box. So I do think it was cool that you might have dated people that were like cooler or like in a certain group, but like then you were friends with like normal people that weren't like super popular, etc.
I love that. Like
Yeah.
and the cool thing is that like I still like the people that were good to me in high school, like I still talk to them. Like even though it may not be every day, like I like remember a lot of faces and like I know it sounds like super petty, but like I I'm definitely I think this is my cancer, aspect to me. But like I don't forget things. And I'm like, there
Hmm.
were definitely things in high school. And I think part of what I'm about to say has to do with why I was friends with like so many, like I was so diverse in my friendships. But I remember the people that were not good to me. And I remembered like the groups that they did belong to. And a lot of the times they were the popular crowd and they were not nice. And like
Hmm.
I just remember being like, dating somebody that was in that popular crowd and I was not comfortable and I didn't like it. And I'm like, I didn't like the way that they treated some of these other, cliques or groups. And I
Hmm.
was like, I'm never going to be one of those people. Cause I was like, what you put in is what you get out. So you're
Yeah.
good to me. I'm good to you. And like,
Yeah.
I just never, I did not want to be one of those people. And like, we had I will say high school was like, it could be vicious. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
there were some vicious people in high school. And like, I don't forget faces. And I was just like,
Yeah.
mm, that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm like,
I feel the same way, and I think it's so funny because, in my perspective, like, I was kind of a floater. Like, I never really belonged anywhere, and I would, like, be bullied. Like, I felt like I was friends with, like, one person in a group, but then, like, the group would, like, make fun of me, or, like, no one else.
oh, girl, you should have told me this in high school.
I was like so like not I didn't really belong anywhere. And so I felt like I just kind of floated and then if like one person was mean, I like hated the whole group. Like I hate high school.
You're like, they're written off.
Yeah, or I would be like the person who like walks in the hall and like really does not see what's going on because I'm like don't fucking care. I'm just trying to get to class. So I feel like I was kind of a floater. So I did remember like the people that were nice to me, like I remembered. But like the people that were like mean to me or like because I was friends with a popular girl, like at I don't know if you remember, but Megan, she was pretty popular, and I was like her best friend, Prera.
Oh, I love Megan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like
Okay.
she was super popular, and I was like not popular, but it was like we were best friends since like first grade, so it was like we just were kind of like a package. But like everyone loved her, but not everybody loved me.
I
So
don't know why you
such
were so cute and like kind in high
oh.
school. Like I don't understand like how people could like not like you.
So I feel like it was always so like okay, for instance, like in like nowadays, I feel like it's funny because like people maybe when I got like Megan got invited to a party and I would go with her and like the guys like would be into her, not so much me. But now because I post these modeling photos and I'm in California, all the
Uh,
guys who didn't give me the time of fucking day are like trying to like my photo or I see them peep my story. I'm like, okay, okay, cool.
that is like the high school story. Like that's just like
Right.
I feel like it's always like when you're the underdog, it's like as soon as you leave high school, all of a sudden like you're that girl. And like
Mhm.
they want to message you and it's like I like
I don't forget.
yeah, you're like again, I don't forget a face. Like I remember like I had guys that after I left high school that like were I guess like guys are just shitty in high school, but like for instance, there was one guy, he called me a fat bitch in high school. And I was like, because I put on a little bit of weight. And I was like, you know what? I went from having an eating disorder to like becoming healthy. And like, yes, I did put on some weight. And then like, it was like, once I started like putting on like healthy weight and I found like this median, and I was like, I was in my single phase. I was going out to some bars and this and that. And I get a Snapchat and like they're trying to slide in those DMs. And I was like, oh, but I thought I was a fat bitch.
Right? It's
You're
like,
like,
what the hell
like,
is wrong with people? Isn't it
yeah.
funny how it's like, yeah, like in the moment of high school, people think like they're the upper hand, like I'm gonna just put this person down and they're not gonna be anything. And then you go off and become this, beautiful person and you're living this life, and then they're still stuck in their same freaking ways. It's so wild to me. But also to your point you just brought up, so I also had an eating disorder, and mine was like really heavily in high school. And it's crazy because I feel like my senior year was like the worst. Like I felt like my eating disorder, because I was bulimic, was making me fatter. Like I actually gained a lot of weight that like made me actually fat. And then like my family would call me fat, or like Form Spring was like super big back then, and they would note you like, oh, I saw you in the holiday and you're so fat. And I'm like, oh my god, it just makes your eating disorder worse.
People suck.
And when did yours kind of start?
So I feel like, I want to say like, I feel like it started after like like, I don't want to like, I'm trying to figure out how we can, because I don't want to transition us into something else, but like,
Oh, okay, okay.
started
We'll
like,
save it.
yeah, it kind of started with that, that thing,
Okay.
which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. I just didn't want to like switch us over.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but that incident, probably, I don't want to say as early as 8, but I think that down the road, the after effects, like by the time that I was probably 12, when you were
I
kind
started
of
at 15.
getting, boys were starting to notice you and start to make comments. And, I felt like for a while there, I was raised really old school. So like my
Mhm.
grandparents, like they were amazing. And I'm glad that they raised me old school, because I feel like it did save me from a lot of trouble and getting into a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
But I was very tomboyish, and I felt like I was 12 going, on 14, and I was still wearing like Bobby Jack and like freaking monkey with bubble gums and like sneakers, and I thought I was cool. Like I was like, okay. But then that's when the boys started with the mean comments, and I was kind of already feeling a certain way about my body, and I was very like, I don't know the word for it. Like I self-conscious, but also just very like, I felt like I was like a loser. Like I was just like, I watched my friends wearing limited too, and Abercrombie started to become a thing. And it was like I was still wearing JC Penney and like, Macy's, and like my aunt and my grandma were always very like, those are like nice clothes. Like you have nice clothes. Like, you dress for your age. And I'm like, yeah, but like my friends are wearing songs and my friends are wearing bras. And like I was over here with a double chin wearing Bobby Jack and like New Balances and Skechers. And like, so,
Yeah.
it was hard, because then it was like, I was like, okay, I went to Abercrombie. And this one incident, I think, is really kind of what pushed it over the edge. Was I put on a pair of sweatpants that I was like, oh, I really like these. And they were the largest size that Abercrombie had. And when I was in the fitting room, I ripped the butt up the seam.
Mm.
And the girl, like, I like called the girl from like the dressing room. I was like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, it's okay. Like, was very like, I could tell that she was like, and it was like one of those like mean girl moments where she's like, maybe you should try Macy's. Like, and I was just like,
Oh,
or Sears or whatever
wow.
she says. And I was kind of like, I can never do this again. And so
Yeah.
I was just like, like I just from there, it kind of like spiraled. And it was so like, I really want to say like, it probably started about 12, sorry to give you all that backstory, but it just
No,
was
no,
like,
it's good. I think that's it. Really, the backstory is everything, because that little comment, people do not know what that can transpire into. Because I feel the same way. I feel like I had in fifth grade, I'm like, and you'd never forget it. Like, you will never forget being in that dressing room because I was in the mall with my fucking shitty dad, and I was wearing what was like, who knew that rompers were gonna be like everything, right? I'm wearing this like romper type outfit, which wasn't really cool yet. It wasn't in style yet. It was like got at a store that wasn't so popular. And I'll never forget it. I was in fifth grade and my dad called me fat in the mall in this outfit, and I will like never forget. It was like soul crushing. And now I look at photos in fifth grade and I'm like, I was so thin. And
Yeah.
it's and like ever since that moment, I'm like, this is where my body dysmorphia started.
Yeah, and honestly, like
It's
people
so
don't
important.
they don't realize like with body, like one thing that I had a lot of like trouble like explaining to my friends is like I didn't know at the time that I had a body like image problem. Like to me, I just thought, oh, well, like like you think that like you're just a teenager and like you need to be skinny and pretty and you need to straighten whatever the fad was at the time. I need to have the coolest mini skirt with leggings, and you know what I'm saying? And it was just like you needed to have like the top style, and you were always trying to follow what the trend was and trying to look the prettiest. And but there was
Mhm,
always like those girls that were just prettier than you or wearing the better
mhm.
clothes than you, and they always had something to say to you about it or make you feel
Yep.
bad about it. And it was like, and guys, like whether it's a dad or an uncle, like especially family, like they don't think when they speak.
Yeah.
And I think that like just because like you're their daughter or their niece or their sister, or they think that like you can just be like, they can say, oh man, like you look chunky in that, and that it doesn't hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
And it's like all it takes is just like that one
One
instant,
comment.
and it just, yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. I get so like, sorry if I like jump around. I get
No,
so like overwhelmed with this because I'm like, there's so much that I have to say because I get so
yeah.
fired up.
We have so much time.
But it's just like, I just, with body dysmorphia, it was so hard to explain to my friends because like I'd be like, "Ugh, I look so fat in this." And they're like, no, you don't. Would you stop? And I'm like looking in the mirror, and they don't understand. Like with body dysmorphia, you will never see like, and that even goes for now. Like you will never see your body, your face, like nothing the way that other people see you. Like when
Yeah.
I look in the mirror, like I see something completely different than what my husband or my friends see. Like, and
Mhm.
it's hard when you have that issue because you're like, how do you explain to them, like they're frustrated with
Mhm.
you because they see one thing, and like
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like that black and blue dress, like they
Yeah.
see white and gold, you see blue and black, and you
It's
can't
true.
explain it. Like you're like, they're like, well, how do you see blue and black? And you're like, I just do, like, you
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? So
That's
it's
a really good point to bring up because I always struggled with that. Like I had body dysmorphia since I was in like fifth grade, and it was just it, and it progresses too. It doesn't get better; it just gets worse at first before you really control it. So it's like here it is progressing, and then like maybe I would be like oh my god, I'm so fat, I'm so fat, and maybe I was next to someone who maybe actually physically might have been a little bigger than I currently was, but to me, like I'm the fattest thing in the world. But then they would be offended by it. And I'm like, I'm not trying to offend you, but this is like how I feel about myself. Like I can't control it. And then you learn like, yeah, like some people just because it's such a weird condition disorder of like your brain that like yeah, like some people just don't see it like how you see it because like they're not in your eyes, they're not in your shoes, they don't like see the reflection back, and it's more of a like it's in our mental state, and it's like an everyday you have to kind of work at it. But you're right, like it's so hard to explain it to people.
it's hard, it's hard, and especially like if you have never been through it, like it's so hard to explain. And especially like it's so funny because like my closest friends would be like, I never even knew you went through that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, just like any addict, because I consider, I mean, if you look at it,
Mhm.
it's a disease, it's a mental and like physical disease. Like you are good at manipulating people into thinking that you're
Mhm.
fine. You're good at hiding it. And like you do what you need to do to sneak around so that nobody knows. Because if people know, then they
Mhm.
try and fix you and they force you and they try and mold you into this person that you're not ready to be yet because just like any addict, any person that has a problem, you cannot, like, they can't fix you unless you want to fix yourself. And like a lot of the times it takes a long time to fix something like an eating disorder. And
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
it honestly, like, I have so much respect for people who have had eating disorders or even just body image issues, because that's something like it runs deep. Like it
Hmm.
runs really deep, and it takes a long time. And I don't want to say like it takes a long time to fix, because it's never, you never like fix it. It just
Hmm.
becomes you learn to live with it and to be healthier and to be better. But like I said, with any addiction, with any kind of problem like that, you like you have to work at it every single day. You have to like check yourself, every single day, because there was a period of time, like even, in my adult life now, where I had, I went through a stage of, I don't want to say anorexia, but it was like, it started, I want to say, with like an anorexia where like I was minimally eating and working out a ton. Like, um, you know, like it was almost like I was punishing myself. And then it became like I was like a total binge eater, and I was binging and then I was throwing up. And then it became like in my adult life, it was just like became a point of I was depressed. I was dealing with my emotions by eating, and it was just binging, and I put on a ton of weight. And where I'm at now is, with therapy and with talking and being more transparent, I found an outlet um, that has really helped me to express myself more, so that I'm not bottling it up and using food as a punishment and as a comfort at the same time. And I know
Hmm.
it sounds so weird to say that, but it's like
It's
you
true.
get so frustrated that you eat as like an emotional thing, but at the same
Hmm.
time it's like you feel so bad, but it feels so good. And I don't know how to explain that, but like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you
Yeah.
go through with, if you're not checking yourself and you're not keeping yourself in line and working at it every day, that's when you relapse. And like, people relapse a lot, anywhere from 5 to 6 times to 100 times before, they level out and they find that healthy median. And so it's a cycle. It's
It's
a
a Yeah, and I like how you said I agree what you said because I will always have body dysmorphia and I'll always be like I'm a bulimic. Like that's just what I was. I mean, I'm not currently binging. I'm not currently bulimic, but like I was, and I could always be, right? Like it never really leaves you. But I always describe it as like I have the control now. Like I control it. Like before it controlled me. I binged, like you said, I also binged so badly. And like you're right, no one knows because it's like it's a shameful act in a sense, but you still are like compulsed to do it, and so you're hiding it. You don't want because you think that you're controlling it by hiding it, but really it's you're not controlling it. And I felt like okay when I started like going to therapy and like speaking my truth and like not being embarrassed that I had an eating disorder and like talking about it, it actually helped me be like, okay, like I control it now. Like now is on my terms and I'm not going to binge. And I haven't binged in a few years, but like you never know, right? So I agree, like you'll always have it. So it's like you're always aware of it, but you control it now.
Yeah, and I mean that's the whole thing is like I think binging is very dangerous, because I feel like with anorexia, at some point people they notice, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And it's like you can't hide it.
Hmm.
Because they start to ask questions. And so binging for me, I think was the hardest thing. And it's the thing that I still fight the most and I really struggle with, and I am always working at the hardest, because when you're binging, like I used to be able to crush like 2 Big Macs. Like I literally, my old friends and stuff like that could tell you, like as my witness, I could crush Big Macs, 3 fries, like a snack wrap, like, and I would eat it like so fast, and they were like, how the hell did you just eat all that food? And like they used to laugh it off, and they're like, dude, Morgan's got a fast metabolism. But like what they weren't seeing is that, people always used to laugh and say, "Oh, we saw you running around town, and like we used to see you running all the time." Like I used to run for like 5 to 6 hours, like nonstop. Like I would run and run around Volunteers Park, around town. Like I used to run, and it was like because I would eat a ton of food and then I would work out and work out and work out.
Compensate for it.
Yeah. And so it was like that was a problem. And like to me, I was like, oh no, I'm just eating what I want and I'm just working out and making excuses. And I was like not realizing that like my now like not eating had turned into now I'm binging. And then after that whole working out episode, it was like that slowly then started turning into vomiting because I still wasn't fulfilling that void and that need to compensate for God knows what. Because I had so much, I had so many issues and so much
Yeah.
emotional stuff going on. So it was like, you know,
Yeah,
it
and I think that's a big point, a big factor to maybe not everybody's story, but a lot of people's story. Because I can agree, like the binging and the weight issues is one issue that like obviously you feel a way about your weight, so you binge. But then there's a lot of outwardy factors like family issues or friend issues or like things that happen to you, like trauma also that then counteracts and contributes to the eating disorder because I had a lot of traumatic events that like I thought I could just control if I can control my weight. And so that's a good factor. Like there is a lot of other things that just go into the eating disorder. It's not just like I think I'm fat and ugly, so let me just throw up. But you're right, it's like you're compensating for all these other issues and you're funneling them into the eating disorder. So I think that's a really good and a good segue too of like your story.
it's a lot of people don't realize how much if you've been through something or you've been through multiple things that what's the word I'm looking for? This is mom brain in its best. Like, I try to look for like I search in my like dictionary and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know the word I'm looking for. But it's you don't realize how much you do is like a trauma response, I guess.
Mhm.
And until I started talking to a therapist, and still until I started to do my research and started doing that soul searching, and really started to look at some of the things that I was doing in my unhealthy habits and my toxic behavior, I didn't realize that a lot of the things that I did in my lifetime were a response to the stuff that I was repressing and I was holding in. And so I think that's right on the money. Like that's 100% is that people, a lot has to do with the stuff that you hold inside of you, like your mannerisms and, lashing out or misprojecting your anger or, work, like I said, eating disorder, working out for 6 hours to punish your body. And you're just thinking, oh, this is an image issue. And you're not really looking at, hey, I had this, and this happened to me. And I just moved right past it. Like I never sat with my emotions and I never sat and like dealt with it. So like it's it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think it's like, it's definitely common for, men and women to be going through this. But I think eating disorders really affect women so much, especially as young girls. But so thank you for sharing that story. But I also do want to segue because this is a bit like we said, like this is into a bigger issue, or not issue, but like a bigger segment into your life. And so I really want to kind of backtrack a little bit and what was your journey? So like high school, everyone has the high school story of like their situation, but what kind of was your like senior year into after high school journey?
So senior year, it was senior year was just kind of it just was. Like I don't think there's really anything special that happened. I mean, I had gotten my junior year into a toxic relationship with I left my high school boyfriend. We all know who that was. Um,
I
and
didn't say it.
I made some not so smart decisions, and I was really immature and like I said going through some really like hard emotional stuff. And I think in turn I thought that this next person was good for me. They came across as caring. They came across as kind, and it it just I don't think that they were a bad person, but they were not a good person for me. And so they that whole I don't even know the word for it. Like it just was chaos. Like that whole like relationship to relationship. Like I felt like I was always the I was long term. So like I only had in my lifetime really like two serious boyfriends before my husband. So that was my high school boyfriend, my like we'll call him my college boyfriend because that lasted until pretty much my husband. And I felt like I was filling my time with this person, and I was just like, I got out of high school, kind of ditched my high school boyfriend because I was just sick of that drama. And I was like, all right, whatever. Like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. It's not for me, not fulfilling me. I was like, whatever. Got with this new person. And then I was going to school for fashion, merchandising, fashion design. And I really enjoyed that. I was really having a good time. And I felt like I was in a good spot for maybe like a year. And then that relationship became just really toxic. And there was a lot of gaslighting, there was a lot of manipulation, and like I said, I don't think this person was a bad person. I just think that we were like gasoline and like fire. Like
Yeah.
we made explosions, and we were just so unhealthy from one another.
What
And
was like, I don't mean to cut you off. What was like some examples of like how you started noticing maybe this is not, this is pretty toxic?
yeah, so about a year into, not even a year into the relationship. Actually no, I'm gonna back up a little bit because I feel like there were earlier red flags. This person kind of put me in a tough position where they were almost forcing me, like I shouldn't say forcing me because I'm responsible for my own decisions, but they were kind of like, making me choose between my high school boyfriend and them. And I was in a position where I've never been a cheater, never cheated on any of my boyfriends. And in this instance, I felt like my ex kind of was doing his own thing. We were kind of worn out and we were just going our separate ways. And I was like, you know what? Like, I never physically cheated, but there definitely was an aspect of I started talking to this other person because they were giving me that attention and that affection that I so badly wanted. But they were putting me in a position where it was like, choose me. Like, and I was like not ready to, but I felt like I kept being directed to, you need to choose me. And like this person, like very much being in my head and saying, this person's not good for you. You need to leave him and you need to do this. And it was like, I had no backbone at that time. I was very much easily influenced. And so I was very like, okay, he's right. And so that's, I ended up cutting that whole thing off, and it was just too much drama. It was crazy. He caused a lot of, I felt like, chaos and just kind of drama in my life, like just from the get go. And then it was like, fast forward a couple of months, and it was like, there was, you know, I couldn't I couldn't hang out with my guy friends anymore. And I've always been one of those girls that I just naturally got along with guys better because they're not catty. They're
Yep.
very simple and they're
Preach!
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, thank you. Thank
They're
you.
simple. They're so simple. And like, I always had guy friends. Like, like I said, like Dylan, and I hung out with Lenny, and I hung out with, my friend Joe, and, that whole group. And it was just like, I liked my guy friends. I knew that if I was having a rough time, I could talk to them, and they weren't trying to hit on me. They weren't trying to, talk about me to the other guy friends. And there wasn't like this catty, like bitchy, just
Mhm.
environment. Like, and I didn't have to worry about, Dylan, sleeping with my boyfriend, which a
Yeah.
lot of my friends in high school like went behind my back, and
Oh
there
wow.
was a lot of that. And so it was kind of like I just I just was not a girl person. Like I was very much, I
Yeah.
liked my guy friends. And when I started seeing this person, that abruptly stopped. And it
Mhm.
was very much like, if you're talking to them, you're cheating on me. And I was like, what? Like, and I was like,
So it
okay, like
slowly
slowly.
progressed.
Yeah. And then it turned into like not wearing certain things. So like,
Mhm.
you know, very much, well, I don't want you wearing that out. Like, I don't need guys checking you out. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. Like, and I'm like, it's just because he, and it's a classic. It's just because he likes me. It's just because he loves me. And
Yeah.
so it slowly transpired into that. And then I started to become that person.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then it was that's not me. Like I was like, I felt like when you're with the wrong person, if there's one piece of advice I can give to girls, when you're with the wrong person, you're going to turn into somebody that you're not. and you're going
Hmm.
to go against your morals and your values and the person that you want to be because you're trying so hard to be this person for them. And the minute that you notice that you're becoming somebody that you don't like, you need to get out.
Yeah, that's
um
a really good advice because I feel like that's when you like you, as you've said, are like this independent person. Like you didn't care what the status quo was. You were friends with whoever you wanted. And so yeah, if you're in a relationship and they're stifling that, that is definitely a red flag.
It's honestly like it's such a tough question asking like my senior like and then they're on because I was like there's so much that like
Yeah,
not so much in high school what happened, but like my
before.
personal life, like there's so much detail and I'm like I know I'm kind of giving you just like the generic synopsis of like what
Yeah,
happened, but
I started with after high school just because I know my I guess my thought process is that I know obviously where you are now, right? So like you're married and you have a kid and we're gonna talk about that. But I feel like in high school you don't process everything you went through younger. So I was gonna see like, okay, where did you go from high school? And then when did you finally realize what you had to process kind of mode?
yeah, but it just like that was another, I think that kind of it was another toxic thing that added on to my plate, but it just was, from there it was like, a year into dating it became, he became a cheater. There was a lot of cheating and like a lot of cheating and a lot of just I was like I got mistreated. I mean, honestly, like, there's a lot of instances where, I'm not going to shift the blame onto anybody because I think relationships, they take two people. But in this instance, like I never cheated on my partner. I just was never that person. And so it just was difficult because I just became so it's almost like you want what you can't have. And it was like I feel like I chased this person harder and they became my
Mm.
life for the next it was almost 5 years. So like
Oh
after,
wow.
from senior year, um it was like right before my grandmother passed. So it was about like 2014, 2015. And it was, I mean, it just was a long time of just bullshit. If I
Yeah.
had to put it frankly, it was a whole lot of bullshit. And, I got my karma. I got my karma for the way that I treated my ex in high school. And I totally take responsibility and I acknowledge that. I mean, I don't think, like I said, either of us were angels, but I definitely feel like I could have ended that a little bit better on my part and I could have been a
Yeah.
little nicer. But the good thing is, I still, my ex from high school, he's such a good guy and I still adore him. I think he's a great person. I love that he's turned out well. I just want to say that. But
See,
yeah,
that's so cool that like you can recognize that and
yeah.
like, okay, like maybe I wasn't perfect, but then and then so that's why I feel like the level building and then it's like when did you realize you had to process your childhood kind of moment?
Yeah. So, um, like I said, so this person added on that layer of just another pile of bullshit that I just had to process. And it did stun a lot of my growth. I kind of went backwards because I went from, I feel like my ex in high school built up my trust with men a little bit more. And then it was like I went with this person, became so enthralled with them, and they completely destroyed me. And I will say that, like, they knocked me to rock bottom. Like, I think that was my first time that I truly got my heart broken. And then it was like after that, I had sworn off men. I was doing my single thing. I was going onto the bars with my girlfriend. I got into like a small relationship, but it was during a really bad time. It was when I was losing my grandma, who, just a preface, I mean, she raised me, so she was more my mom than anything. And that was really, really, really hard. And honestly, she was I want to say she was my driving force and my turning point in like my healing and my recognition of, the stuff that I was going through and the toxic person that I had become and all these layers. Like I feel like that movie Shrek, where he's like, onions have layers, and I'm like, I had so many layers at that point. Um,
Yeah.
I was just like, when I lost her, emotionally, like I became so numb. Like I was just numb. And I fell into like this little relationship. It was about 5 months and it just it was not for me, and we kind of just went our separate ways. And he was the last person before my husband. And when I lost my, I'm just going to call her my mom. When I lost my mom, we like, I went through this period of questioning my religion, questioning who I was, questioning like, okay, like I went from having like, it's just so weird. Like when you lose a parent, you go from having like, you're used to your everyday routine, you're used to coming down the stairs and seeing them, you're used to just like that, your normalcy, like, you know, and depending, I was so dependent on her. Like you don't realize how dependent you are on somebody, especially your parent, until they're no longer there. So like when she was gone, like she literally was the glue that held our family together. So when she passed, like I felt like I completely lost who I was because I was so codependent on her. And I, at that point, it was just me and my grandfather. So it was like I now was in the house by myself, and I'm like, here I'm like, I have, you know, I'm working a job, and I'm, you know, I'm like, well, what's next, like what do I do? And so I fell into this like period of like, I now was like swearing off men. I wanted nothing to do with them. I was grieving, you know, the loss of my mom. I was questioning who I was. I was super, super mad, you know, at God. Like I was just, my religion was shot. I hit this like dark, like rock bottom where I was like, I just don't even know anymore. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
it's just like, what is the point of everything? And so there was a lot of like this questioning that was happening. And that's why I say like this was this transformation, because in this short amount of time from high school, you know, to, you know, 5 years doesn't seem like a lot, but so much had happened in that time. You know, I had this huge heartbreak, and then I lost my mom. And then it was like, you know, I had this huge transitional period where I started to look back on the abuse that I had suffered when I was younger, you know, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, you know, the stuff with my mom, my actual biological mom, then looking at my toxic relationships, and then looking at, you know, suffering my first real like loss of somebody. And then it was like, you know, you're left there and you have to pick up all these pieces and process like this 20 something, I was 20 years old, 21 at the time when all this kind of like really hit me. And I'm like, you know, 20 years, 21 years of life, and you're like, I have to unpack all these bags, and how do I unpack them, and what do I get rid of, and what do I keep? And it's like, it's so, I want to use the word overwhelming, but I feel like that's not even a big enough word to describe what you go through in that moment. And so like it just was, it was hard, but honestly like that is what changed me, because there were so many things, I think, from my grandmother going on hospice, and what, you know, being there when she died, and being there, you know, it only was 2 short weeks, and those weeks just, you feel like you don't have enough time, and you don't have this time to
Yeah.
mentally prepare. And so it brings up a lot of emotion, a lot of raw emotion. um and so that really like, I feel like it catapulted me. It catapulted me so fast to things that I would normally get angry at, like I was more reserved with. Things that like I would normally jump to react to, I was like, why am I giving this my reaction? And it made me realize that like from the time that she kind of got sick and we thought we were just bringing her to the hospital for something stupid, that like, you know, to the time that she died, it was just 2 weeks. All it took was 14 days to lose the most important person in my life. And to me, I was like, it made me really think like, I don't have a lot of time on this earth. And like nobody's guaranteed, like you're not guaranteed anything. I'm not guaranteed the next hour. I'm not guaranteed the next 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like it made me think like, what, you know, what do I want to do with my life? Like who do I want to be? And you know, it was just like this, like I said, this whole questioning and this transition of, I, like I said, I only have so much time on this earth. How do I want to spend it?
Yeah.
And like how do I want people to remember me? And how, you know, do I want to spend my next 5 minutes with this person that makes me absolutely miserable, or do I want to spend this next 5 minutes on a boat drinking white claws with my best friends, like, you know, saying stuff that makes me happy? And so I decided that like I wanted to start living my life with intent. I wanted to start living my life with people that I love, you know, doing things that I love and making myself happy.
And that's awesome. like
Yeah.
that you came to a moment like that, because as so unfortunate it is, and rest in peace to your grandma mom,
Mhm.
that, and she's looking down on you like what an amazing woman you've become, and you've made another woman, that she's, looking down in such pride. But it's so sad and unfortunate that moments like that do kind of catapult you into like processing your life. And that's kind of why I wanted to start in high school plus, because I feel like when you're younger, you don't really understand all the stuff and trauma that happens. But when you're older, it's kind of, or like in a situation like this where you're forced to like think about it, and you're right, like unpack those onion layers. Like it's so always the wrong moment you feel like it's happening, but in a sense it like everything kind of happens for a reason to like let you then like uncover those layers.
Yeah.
So saying that, and now kind of on that end, because we're talking about your grandma mom, let's now go back and the layers you've had to unpack. Let's kind, if what you're comfortable with, talk about the you kind of, yeah, your childhood and the layers that you didn't know were there, but as you got older were there.
Yeah, so it really starts with like my biological mom. She just honestly like great mom, she great person. Um, she just fell into the wrong group. And when I was young, she was an alcohol. I should say that she was a heroin addict. She got involved with heroin. I think, as we all know, heroin is one of the toughest drugs that I think runs the street. And she started with that, and we don't know like if she was a true alcoholic or if she was the alcoholism just kind of went hand in hand with the drug addiction.
Yeah.
And because of that, there was just a lot of messiness like in our lives, not even just mine, but you know my poor grandparents, my aunt, who she honestly is like my big sister, and also like a second mom. Like her and my grandmother, they worked effortlessly as a team to raise me. And my aunt, she went through, I think, a lot with that. And the way that my mom just she caused a lot of heartache and a lot of chaos in our lives. When I was living with her, there was a lot of things that I do remember. She had a roommate, and her roommate, my mom thought it was easier to tell my grandparents that this was her girlfriend than to and told my grandparents that she was a lesbian, and that this was her girlfriend and this is the life that she was choosing, because it was easier to admit that than it was to admit that she was literally living with her drug dealer. This woman was, she's, just to put it frankly, she was evil. I She was disgusting, and the way that she physically abused me, and emotionally abused me, was something that I can't ever forget. And people are like, well, how do you forget? I mean, how do you remember things from when you were 4, when you're 5, or, however old I was? And I'm like, you don't forget like your mom going into, deal drugs and leaving you on the outside of a building at, I don't even, I mean, I couldn't tell time. So I don't know what time it was, but it was dark. And I know we probably were not in a good area looking back on it now. And that was one of my most prominent memories was, here I was sitting out, I was young, and I'm sitting outside of this building, and I'm like, I don't know where I am. I don't know where my mom is. And, I don't know if she forgot about me, or if, I mean, I don't really know, but I just remember like I had a lot of, I'm not terrified of the dark now, but I had a lot of issues with being afraid of the dark, being afraid of, my grandparents knew something was wrong when I was noticeably afraid of African American males. I was, very like scared of them, and they didn't know why, and they were like, they didn't know why I was the way I was with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so when they found out that my mom was using, and they found out all these things, they realized that I had a lot of issues because of
Yeah.
that. because
Yeah,
even so,
and you're so impressionable at that age that of course it's gonna imprint you because it's a trauma. Like you're traumatized by like you think when you're young and you're at the mall and your mom walks away, you're like, "Oh, where'd my mom go?" Like that your situation is even intensified. So like of course you're going to remember that because it's so impressioned into your brain.
yeah, and it was hard because the her name was Chris and she lived with us, and it was essentially my mom's drug dealer, and she just did really really awful things to me. I had a nanny for a really long time, like a pacifier,
Mhm.
and she would just do really mean things, like she would just rip it out of my mouth, and she would um like tease me with it and tell me, that I wasn't, like I'm not supposed to have this. I'm too big to have this. And I'm like, I wasn't. And it was just, she just would do things just to be like mean and spiteful. And obviously there were much worse things that happened. There were times where she would hit me with a wiffle ball bat because it wouldn't leave marks. And there were, she did really fucked up things, to put it frankly.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, if they're on such heavy drugs, they're just so fucked up in general that how can they even care for this little girl?
yeah.
When was the moment that you like officially got taken out of their custody and put with your grandparents?
So, that's a good question. So I wouldn't, the thing is, my grandparents, how my mom never really wanted to give up guardianship. Um, like I said, she was a great mom, and I know that she loved me, like she did. She did. I think that she was just so probably doped up that she didn't realize what was going on.
Yeah.
And even to this day, there was things that I would like tell her about, and she'd be like, "That didn't happen," and I'm like, "But it did," and like she just didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was like I never. My mom had me staying with. She didn't want to give up guardianship, but she knew that like she couldn't take care of me because she was doing what she was doing, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
she had these two friends that she would send me to often, but it was like becoming like I was staying with them for elongated periods of time, and they were like, we can't, like, they would love to keep me, but then my grandparents, like, I was bounced around. So I wouldn't say like my grandparents ever like really took me because they had me a lot, and so did her two friends. So it was just kind of like I was bounced around, and then at some point my grandparents were kind of like, "What's going on?" And like,
Yeah.
"Where is Morgan? Like, where is she staying?" From this is just from what I've heard. 'Cause
Mhm.
that's a point that I don't know if it's that I don't remember it or that I've repressed it, but my I had my aunt said that at one point I was downstairs doing laundry with my grandma, and she it was either I was doing laundry with her and she had like a razor blade or something from her. She worked for ShopRite, like a blade cutter. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's what mommy uses to put the stuff in her nose." Or she said that there was something like on cops, and I was like, "Oh, that's the stuff that mommy puts in, like her, puts in her nose." And my
Yeah. So you
grandparents,
picked up on all of that.
yeah, and it was like, my grandparents, my aunt were very big on like we don't tell secrets. They always told me like we don't tell secrets. So I was always very transparent with them about stuff.
That's good.
And my grandparents, like, they didn't believe my aunt when my aunt was trying to tell them that something was wrong until that moment when I kind of said to them, "Hey, that's the stuff that mommy puts in her nose," and they were kind of like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, and
It like
so
dawned on them.
yeah, and so I never really, I was with them a lot of the time, towards like the end of it. So it wasn't really that they ever came and took me. It just kind of became
Gratitude.
an agreement of, when my mom did have to go to prison, it was like, "You'll keep her until I get better, and then I'm going to take her back." And I just never got back with my mom. It just never worked out that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
so,
you, I'm sorry, do you
no, you're good.
presently have a relationship with her or it kind of just like ended?
It's it's hard because we do have like we talk, but it's definitely a work in progress. Like, it's not a typical mother-daughter relationship.
Do you feel like it's more like a friend? Like you're just figuring out each other and like you're figuring out if like what you get along with?
I wouldn't even say that. It's just kind of we talk when we talk, and like it's hard because it's for a while there was like a toxic relationship, and it's just like I don't even know how to explain it. It's such a hard thing to explain because it's not it's not like a friendship, and it's not like,
A mothership.
yeah, it's just kind of it
It's
just
that like in between almost.
yeah. And I'm like, that's literally the only way I can explain it is
Yeah.
it just is like it just
And
exists.
that's totally okay. Like, I think it's even reputable for all that you've went through to even want to talk to her. Like, some people would completely be like, because I had the adverse effect. Like, not my mom, but my dad was a drug addict, alcoholic, biker, had his biker gang, cared only about his biker gang. Like, the kids came last. And so, like the same thing, I would like pick up on the nuances, like, huh, why is his nose bleeding like on Christmas? Like, that's a little weird. Then you grow up a little bit and you're like, oh, he's like doing coke like on Christmas. And so you like slowly do, like as a kid, pick up on those little things. And so I then eventually it became really bad and toxic, and then I just decided like, I'm fucking done with this. Like, I completely cut them off, and it is what it is. There's so much drama that goes into it of like other reasons why, but like I think that's really reputable that you still manage like somewhat, like even if it's whatever in your like however you're comfortable with it, like it's not a friend, it's not my mom, but like I will still talk to her. That's so reputable because it shows your strength. Like I don't think I have that strength.
Girl, thank you. I mean, it's just, I kind of just roll with stuff. Like, I'm just like, it is what it is. Like, I've had my times. Like, don't let me fool you. Like, I mean, we've had our times where I've called her and I've lost it, and I've screamed at her, and there's a lot there that needs to be worked through that just, it's like spinning wheels. And it's hard. It's hard to have a relationship with her, because there's just it's hard because she has her own stuff, that she has to deal with, mentally too, and it's like Jekyll and Hyde. So it's it depends on the day, and it's hard because sometimes, like, I will admit, like, I cry and I get sad because I she'll have a day where she's my mom, and then it's like the next day she's space cadet, and she is frustrating. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's just a day by day, and it's on my end, like, I know that I could probably do better, but it's bare minimum, and I just kind of, we talk and we talk, and because this is her first grandchild, I am respectful of that, and, like, I send her pictures, and but it's just as hard for me. Like, it's gonna take time
Yeah.
because I never had that bond.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense because you think your grandma was your mom.
Yeah.
Did you know your dad? Do you have a dad?
So I do have a dad. I do know him. Actually reconnected with me. It was, oh man, I can't remember if it was my junior year or it was for homecoming. It was
Okay.
literally, he called me, like, I had never talked to him in, like, at that point, it was probably what, it was like 17, 18, and 17 years, like, never
Oh,
spoke,
wow.
never, nothing. And he just called my house out of the blue, and I don't know, like, how, like, he knew about, like, how he, like, knew I was still home, or I don't know, but he called, and it was right before my homecoming game, and I'll never forget that because I was, like, sitting on the floor, I was doing my cheerleading bow and my makeup, and I was so pumped, and I remember, like, I cried, and I was like, you know and nobody told me who was on the phone. They just said, oh, like, like, you're normal, like, hey, Morgan, come get the phone. And so I went downstairs, grabbed the phone. I'm like, hello. And he was like, hey, it's your dad. And I was
It's
like, okay, the first
so,
off, loose term for somebody that is a complete
yeah.
sperm donor. And I'm like, second, it was just odd to me. And so, like, I just remember I, like, cried on my floor, and I was just like, it just was such an overwhelming feeling. And so, um, we've also had a very spotty relationship, and I, had spoken to him right before I had my daughter, and I just to let him know, hey, like, I'm pregnant, you're gonna have a grandchild, and he apparently is sober and he's trying to get sober, and it seemed like he was doing good with it. So that was kind of the last time we touched base. And he has me on Facebook, so here and there he comments, and he his sisters and I have reconnected with, not reconnected, but connected with a bunch of my family that's over in Canada. So that was really cool. Discovering all my cousins and aunts and stuff, and they're really sweet. And so getting to know my dad's side of things, and it was cool in the aspect of getting to know the other side of me and kind of seeing like some of my mannerisms and how they relate to them. And
Yeah,
I feel like when you do not, you don't have to have a relationship with them, but knowing who your parents are definitely help you to better understand yourself. Because
that's
as much
true.
as I hate to admit it, you're 50-50 of these two people, and
That's
so
so
some of your
true.
fucking traits come from them. So like, I'm like, am I being an asshole today? Yeah. Does that come from my dad? Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? So it kind of helps you to also understand why you're part dickhead sometimes, if I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put it straight up.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, I definitely know the 50% I get from my mom and the 50% I get from my dad. Like, every time I always like joke, like, all my bad assets are definitely from George. Like, so I think it's good to recognize, like, no one's gonna, or maybe people do, and that's great for them. But in, your situation, I can relate. Like, not, our parents are not perfect, but it is good to recognize because if we want to grow and overcome these things, we need to like at least know, yeah, like where we come from. So what a crazy experience. So like at 17 and being like, this is your father, like holy shit, like
Because yeah,
big, big weight.
that was crazy to me because I was like, how do you handle that? Like nobody said anything. And I should have taken that as a cue, because usually my grandma's like, hey, Kristen's on the phone, or hey, like Lana's on the phone. Like, my high school friends, like just like, hey, so and so's on the phone. And I'm like, she was like, hey, the phone's for you. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I just grabbed the phone and I went up to my room and I was like, hello? Like, and that was not what I was expecting. And so
Yeah.
to hear him on the other line, and I'm like, yeah, like honestly, my first thought was like, I was like, you son of a bitch. Like I have wondered my whole life
Where you've
who
been.
you were, where you've been, like why you left, and like I was just like, what the hell? And so it was like that immediate, like was just like I was angry. Like I was like,
Yeah.
don't call yourself my dad. Like I'm like, who
Mhm.
are you? Like all you did was create me and then you were gone. Like
Yeah.
so that first like initial shock was mostly I think anger, and then it kind of like set in and like the emotional aspect came in, like that resentment of like, hey, I watched my best friend who lived across the street from me leave every day and go to her father-daughter dances and watch them take pictures. And I remember sitting on my stoop and being like, I'll never get to do that. And like, never having, that dad to like, I can never be a daddy's girl. I mean, I was a grandpa's girl through and through. My grandpa is my homeboy like for life, and I love him to death. But it's hard because when you're younger, that's your grandpa. So in your head, you're like, I don't have a dad. Like, and
Definitely.
people would ask you, like, that was one of the hardest things growing up in elementary school, because kids are brutal, kids are honest, like they just like they're like, why does your hair look like that, or like why are you missing an eyebrow, like they're not afraid to ask you, and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like
Yeah.
and like, oh, like, well, you have a booger in your nose. So like a lot of the kids were like growing up, they're like, why don't you have a dad? And I was like, I don't know. Like I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what
Yeah.
happened to my dad. Like I don't know how to answer that question. And like that was the whole like, if I had $1 for every time growing up somebody asked me like, why do you live with your grandparents? And I literally at one point just came up with like this generic response, and I said it to everybody. Like I was just like,
Oh.
yeah, I was like, oh, I just live with my grandparents. It's like because my parents abandoned me. Like just kind of was like, and they were like, okay, like you know what I'm
Like,
saying?
how do you question that further?
Yeah, like they're like, all right. So it was just like very simple. And I was like, this is what it is. And they were kind of like, okay. Like even my friends' parents, like people that you would think like would know better, like maybe don't ask about it. Like they would just be like, so why do you live with your grandparents? And I'm like, Well, now this spaghetti kind of seems fucked up. I want to go home. Like, I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
that's
like,
like, you're right, like so loaded. Like, oh shit, now. And then that's crazy too. Like, you yourself, as a defense mechanism, had to be like, let me just come up with one response. Like, it's heavy. Because not that same, not same situation, but I had like absent parents. Like, technically growing up, they both were there, but like one abused us and like hit me, and like the other was like, my mom's getting abused too. So, how much help can she be? And so,
yeah.
like, I always had the question like, how come your family, like, where are your parents? Like, what's your ride home? Or like, where are they on the sidelines? Like, nope, not here, not here. And I always found that, and I think it's awesome that you had such great grandparents that really were there for you and took you in and helped raise you. And I always found that like a father figure, I always like if I was close with a friend, like their dad, I felt like became my dad. Like, oh my God.
Thank you for saying that because that is so true. Like, I definitely feel like that's one thing like kids like us have in common is like we gravitate to like the people that give us love. And
Mhm,
like I was very much like that. Like my childhood best friend, Lee, I don't you know Lee Coletto, right?
mhm, mhm,
So like she was like literally like my sister, like from another womb. And her
mhm.
parents, like I pretty much like lived at her house. And she like her parents treated me just like their daughter. Like I was super close with her mom and
That's
dad, and like
awesome.
we always did so much fun stuff together.
Yeah,
And like they just like they kind of like filled that, you know, like that
the
parental
void.
void.
Hmm.
And like I even like as I got older, like you know, my best friend Kristen, I like her grandma, like I just call her grandma. Like I would literally just
Hmm.
walk into her house, even if she wasn't home, and hang out with her little sister and like
Yeah.
hang out with like her mom or go somewhere with her mom. Like they just became like my family, and I felt like I was closer. It's kind of fucked up, but like I was always closer with
Hmm.
my friend's family, but I kind of kept my friends at a distance from my family.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
was like a defense mechanism. Like
Yeah.
I just was very close with them. Like, go
And it's
ahead.
also like a little embarrassment of your own family. Like, oh shit, I have, and then it's like I was super shy, but then like once I like got comfortable with like that friend and their family, you like start opening up and you just start saying like, fuck my, yeah, like, oh, my dad's a piece of shit. Like, they obviously feel bad, so they're obviously like so caring for you, and like you're so thankful. Like, I was so appreciative for all of the friends I did have because like their families were so nice to me. I was like the little Kimmy Gibbler, like coming next door. And so yeah, it's like you like attach yourself, like you always want to be with your friends, and then you're almost like embarrassed of your own family. Like, ah, I don't want to bring anyone here. It's fucking a hot mess over here.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm like happy that you said that because that's such a good point because it's so true. Like we just like fall into this category of like you become so close with other people's parents because like you're like the bird that fell out of the nest and you're just
Hmm.
like, hey, just take me in, you know. And
Yeah.
it was like, and it sucks because I'm like looking back on it now, like as a parent myself, like I haven't been a parent for that long, but there definitely like even with my god kids, like there were definitely things that made me appreciate my grandparents. Like I'm like my aunt, my grandparents, I mean they gave I will say they gave me a great childhood. Like my aunt, you know, instead of going to like Cancun with her friends on spring break because she was young, like when I was born, she was still in high school. So like we're relatively like close in age. And so like when I was like younger and she worked her ass off to take me to Disney and like instead of going on spring break with her friends. And I'm like, what 20 something year old do you know that does that? Like, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And like she would take me to her boyfriend's house with her. Like I tagged along with her everywhere. Like I was like, you know, my aunt was somebody that I really, really looked up to, and she was such a like and is such a great female role model for me. Her and my grandmother, like they gave me a great childhood. I'm like, here I was, I'm like gravitating towards everybody else's parents because I felt like I had this mom and dad void to fill, and I never really realized that I had mom and dad. I had two mom and dad. Like, so
Yeah.
it was, you know, I was very, very fortunate looking back on it. But when at the time, like, I did not realize it. And I definitely, you know, as hard as a pill for me to swallow as it is, like, I took it for granted. And
Mhm.
so, like, it I'm glad that you said
Yeah, that's a good point too, what like how you counteracted because I think as much as like family drama like you and me had in different ways, but I feel like you're right. Like as I got older and like moved to and got in college and it was like my own life and then you have maybe falling outs with that friend and those families. But you do almost forget like oh my mom was here the whole time too and she did experience the same so then you do find like oh wow like you didn't appreciate them completely because you had your own issues and you felt certain ways about things and then as you're older you're like huh you think a little different about like you're right. So and then also too like how was it I know like so we're kind of jumping around but I think it's goes with your story but becoming a first time mom yourself, like how was that experience to like overcome all of your, unpacking? And then of course you're now like having your own child. Like was that like the magical like how was that experience for you? Like did you feel like when you were having your child, do you feel like you were in a place where like you then understood all your past, or are you still kind of, I mean, it's always a process, right? We're always processing our lives, but how was that for you to be a mom yourself?
pregnancy was a shit show. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it. So my first two trimesters were amazing but emotional. I didn't realize how hard being pregnant would be without my mom.
Yeah.
Um, that's one thing you don't think about. Like you're like, I can do this. Like I did this my whole life, on my own and like I can do this and like I don't need this and I'm like, I'm fine. And then it was like, I got pregnant and I'm like, I found myself having questions that I felt like my not my biological mom, my grandma could have answered. Um, and then it was like tough too because then I'm grieving like the presence of my biological mom because you're biologically programmed to love this person and to feel connected to them. And like there were so many questions that I wanted to ask her, like what did you crave like when you had me, and how long were you in labor with me, and what was that like, and you know what I'm saying, wanting to have this bond with her and share my pregnancy with her and knowing that I couldn't. And then like my grandma who literally like we all joke that she was like the medicine man of the family. Like she literally, like, I kid you not, like, my cousin Leah.
Hmm.
You can ask Leah and she will tell you, like, my grandma was the glue that literally, like, held our family together. Like, was, she was there to drive her sister's places and she was taking care of my grandpa and she took care of me. And she was always, she was there to help my aunt when my aunt had her first kid. And, she just, like, she was always the caregiver and was always, like, that person. So, like, you asked her a question, she had an answer. You were sick, she had a remedy. Like she was just that person. And like everything that she told you was always correct. Like she just always could fix it. And so I was so used to growing up my whole life having an answer and having a fix to everything, a solution. And when you get pregnant and there's so like you don't realize how scary it is. A lot of women don't talk, like you see the glitz and the glamour on Instagram and Facebook. Women don't talk about the anxiety and the stress that comes with pregnancy, because in your mind you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, then we get pregnant, and then I'm gonna get pregnant for 9 months and then the baby comes out and everything's good. And it's like that is so far from the truth.
It's like an alien is growing in you.
It's emotional. Like I just didn't, I was not mentally prepared for how emotional and how scary it would be. And then when things, took a turn for the worse in my third trimester, they thought that I had cancer and they
Shit.
were kind of like prepping me for the worst. And I remember like when you
Holy shit. Hold on, hold on. Holy shit. You're in your third trimester, which means you're basically about to pop, right? I'm not pro at pregnancies, but my sister just got pregnant. I mean, my sister just had a baby, and my boyfriend's sister had a baby, and my best friend has a year-old baby. So there's been a lot of babies around me, so I'm not proficient, but like I kind of get the gist. But like, holy shit, so you're almost ready, and they're telling you that there's like complications. And
yeah.
first off, how was that even to comprehend? Because that's an adult trauma now in your life. Like we already know like you have some, childhood and then growing up and relationship, and then it's like Like you're telling me I'm about to die? What the fuck?
Honestly, like when I tell you, like me and my husband, we joke about it all the time because I literally think that we were like made for one another because
Mm.
we have the worst luck that I've ever seen. And I was so happy to meet somebody else that had the same luck as me because like
Right.
we have the same like tendency to like when something good is happening, we're like, okay, what's gonna happen next? Like what is coming for us like that we don't see? Like so
Yeah.
like I was like happy that me and him both have this sick sense of humor about our horrible luck. So I was like, it literally, I mean, I was due in March. I was due March 3rd, and it was like January 13th is when I had this. They were sending me to maternal fetal medicine because they told me they're like, girl, you're chunky as hell. Your BMI is like shit. So, like, you have to go to maternal fetal. So I was like, okay, I'm fat. I got to go to maternal fetal. Not a big deal. And my maternal fetal doctor, I mean, their job is to pretty much watch you every which way, your labs, the baby, making sure that like nothing goes wrong. And if something is wrong, that they tackle it head on. Like their job is to be over proactive and catch the things that could kill you and the baby.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten some labs back. The labs were not good. They were pretty bad. So they were, my white blood cell count was all out of whack. It was extremely low. And in pregnancy, it's supposed to be like elevated. So long story short, my labs were all jacked up. And my maternal fetal doctor, I had skipped like a month or two going with him because our insurance, for some reason, there was like a lapse in when my new insurance started. And I was like, I'm not paying like $800 for a visit. So I said, we can skip 1 month. It's not going to kill me. Nothing was wrong at that point. Well, apparently I made the wrong choice because as soon as my ultrasound was done at that appointment that day, my doctor came in and he's like, hey, he's like, what were you sick with? And I was like, sick. And he goes, yeah. He goes, you have like no white blood cells. And I was like, I didn't. I was like, I thought that was. I noticed like from being in my profession, I was like, I knew that my white blood cell count was abnormal, and I said I just thought maybe it was pregnancy because when I asked my OB about it, they were kind of like, nope, you're good, everything's fine. And then when he came in and said something about it, I was like, I should have trusted my gut. Like something told me that something was wrong, and I questioned it, and it was kind of blown off. And you trust your doctors, and so at that point, I started to sweat a little bit. And he sat me down in his office, and he was like, "Well, we need to talk." And I was like, okay. And I started to cry, and he was just like, listen, because I already knew it was coming. I know what that means, and I knew what my numbers meant, but I thought it was just a pregnancy thing.
Yeah.
And so he basically said to me, we need to look at like treatment options. We need to start exploring this more because he basically told me that they thought that I had a blood cancer. He thought that I had
Yes, yeah.
leukemia or what's the other one? Lymphoma, Hodgkin. So these were, I'm like, here I am. I go from having this wonderful pregnancy. I was glowing. I felt great. To all of a sudden, I was like, my third trimester hit me really hard. And then now I'm being told that they think I have cancer. So the scariest thing was they started sending me to hematology oncology. And when you're the youngest person sitting in a cancer center, getting ready for infusions and transfusions, like that was scary. And I just remember I cried for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the hematologist, she was like, you're basically after a week, she was just like, you're fine. She was like,
Oh,
this was your body just in the third trimester didn't like pregnancy. And then I had about 3 ER visits because I had really bad preeclampsia that happened out of the blue. And so that my pregnancy, honestly, towards the end really scarred me. And I said to my husband, I was like, I can't have another child. Like I was like, it was so scary that I was like, I don't want
yeah.
another baby. Like I
Holy
don't
shit, yeah, like you just lucky to get there out alive.
it was I was like I'm just happy that I was able to, after they induced me, I delivered this healthy baby. She was a good weight when she came out, and she was almost 4 weeks early. So I was just happy that at almost a month early that she was in good standing. It was almost 7 pounds, so that was like really, that was good for me. And
Yeah.
um but that whole process of the emotional aspect of like not having that guidance, and then now all of a sudden they're telling me I have cancer, and I'm thinking about like, so I'm going to bring a baby into this world, and I'm thinking about, oh, I have to go through treatment, and then what if treatment doesn't work and then I'm terminal? Like I'm going to leave my husband with this baby, and these bills and this responsibility and this home, and you know what I'm saying? And I know that
It's
he
so
would be
wild.
fine, but it was just that I don't know. I just it was hard. It was a really
Yeah.
scary period. And so like that and just that emotional aspect of not having the support that I needed female wise was you need a lot of support when you're pregnant. Like not so much financial or physical or anything like that, but that emotional, like just having another female to talk to and like say, hey, like today was really rough. Can I just talk to you? And like that was you need a lot of that in pregnancy and especially after pregnancy. And so it just was motherhood is it's hard. It's hard and it's glamorized and people make it seem like it's this um you can pop out all these kids, and for some women that may be true. Some women, they love being pregnant, they love having kids, and it comes easy to them and they don't have any complications, and that's wonderful. But we're too often basing every pregnancy off of that, and we're not talking about stuff that matters. And so you constantly go into your pregnancy thinking that it's going to be this wonderful thing, and then when you get blindsided like I did, it emotionally it wrecks you and you're like,
Yeah.
why is that?
And that is just, whoa. That's like, girl, like, oh my gosh, like, you, like, queen over here. Like, holy shit, like, that's intense. And like, to be still so positive and like with your blog, which we'll talk about, and like to be the woman you are after all this shit is like so incredible. So really hats off to you.
Well,
It
thank you.
is a good point that you said because I'm a person who's not been pregnant. It's not happening in my future at the moment. And so you're right. I do you like besides the people that just had babies around me and their specific stories, but the media is only positive. Like, oh, look at these celebrities, they're all having babies and they're glowing and their pregnancy photo shoots. But like, yeah, like we don't hear the real stories. Like maybe if women heard more of these stories, they can prepare better, they can like have better arrangements, or they could just maybe have someone to talk to more so. And so it's, yeah, how can you prepare for not even knowing you potentially could have had cancer, potentially could have, like, that is so freaking mind blowing. Like the mind fuck of that is crazy. And then here you are, ultra sensitive to like you're about to bring a baby into this world, and then like, so also how was it with your husband's support? Like, was that like everything in those
He's
moments?
amazing.
You
I
made it
just
a good
can't.
person.
I'm gonna brag on him so hard right now. My husband is a one of a kind human being. He is the kind of person that I hope everybody's daughter in their lifetime can have a man like that. Like he is my rock. He's just I love him. Like that's why I married him. He has
Mm.
helped so much and he's so ready to always tackle everything. He like he never complained once, and it was like I remember when we came home from the hospital. I definitely had the baby blues. You prep so much to come home and you're so excited to get home because the hospital fucking sucks, and like you just want to be in your own clothes, you want to shower, like that's the first thing you want to do. And so my family came down and his parents were going to be coming over soon, and like I remember like looking at my aunt and I just started crying and I was like, I need
Mm.
to take a shower. Like I didn't know if it was sleep deprivation. I was like, why do I feel like this? Like I thought I would be like joyous and just full of all this, like I thought rainbows would be shooting out of my ass, like being home with a new baby, and it was terrifying. And like I had baby blues. And so like I remember like going up to the shower and I climbed in the shower and my husband came up and he climbed in the shower with me and I just started crying. And like
Oh,
he just held me and he's like, you're doing a great job. And he was just so like he's so supportive.
oh my
And
heart.
like he's honestly like anytime that I've had, even with my past emotional stuff and all the issues that I've had and like, the just the trauma, like he lets me cry and doesn't make me feel guilty about it. Like he has seen my fights with my mom, he has been there, when I break down because I'm talking about, my past sexual abuse and my physical abuse and all of my, when I feel like I'm super fucked up and I don't feel like I'm a sufficient enough human being, he's there and he listens, and he honestly is just everything that I could have asked for in a partner. And he's such an amazing dad to Maisie. Like
Oh.
he was cut out to be a girl dad. Like he's just He like is so sweet
Hashtag.
with her. Yeah, hashtag girl dad. He's just amazing. Like there's no other words to sum up what a great human being he is and just what a great spouse and partner. Like he he fulfills me and like he just makes me a better person. Like I like who I am when I'm with him. And from the moment that I met him, everything just fell in line and it became easy. Like if
That's
that's
awesome.
yeah, if that's one thing that I could say again, some advice for girls is when you meet the right person, like people literally, you hear this all the time. You think it's so cliche until it happens to you, but when you meet the right person, everything is easy. Like there's no, you don't have to fight for it. You don't have to like, claw tooth and nail to get this person to love you. You don't have to ask them to do right by you. Like you don't have to fight for their love. Like they just love you. And like it just is natural. And that's not to say that there's not gonna be days where you don't want to like rip his eyes out because I love him, but he drives me nuts sometimes. But like he like from the moment that I've met him, I've become a better person. I feel better on the inside. And he radiates like everything that like is good. And
Oh,
so
my
like
heart.
I just want girls to
Awesome.
know that. I was like, don't settle. That's one thing I can say on Rad Chat. Don't settle. Like
You heard it here.
don't settle and like you're gonna go through bad relationships, but like too much that I'm seeing nowadays is like girls are like swearing off romance for the rest of their lives and they're like, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna swear off men and I'm never gonna be happy. And I'm like, it's not true. Like, don't buy into that because there will be a guy out there. It took me a long time. I had to date a bunch of assholes to get to my Prince Charming. But like he's the nice guy. He's the one that you're not gonna see coming. And like Matt literally walked into my life on a seriously horrible blind date that it was really blind because my brother-in-law did not tell him I was coming. So it
Oh,
was really blind and like it was the best date I've ever had. It was a disaster, but I to this day like I was like from the moment I saw him he can make me laugh like nobody else. I love him. He's a great father and I just knew from the get-go like I didn't need to be with him for longer than a couple of weeks to know that like that was my person. And so
oh,
that's why I'm like, I'm gonna take a moment to brag on him because I wouldn't
yeah,
do it
that's
without my husband.
awesome. And it's really awesome too. And what we're gonna get into the next segment is because you like the message of you'll find like yeah, like to everyone listening, like everyone there's a million billion people in the world, like everyone will find their match. It takes time or whichever, like a crazy situation, like a blind date or whatever. But like or for me too, like the way I met my partner is I ran into him at work. Like, he was a customer and I was working there and I was just running up to like help the line and slammed into him. Like you never know, you know?
I love that.
It's a really good thing to say. And the next thing is like, I love that you just said all this amazing stuff about him because to know what you've recently shared on social media and then to know you have this like such caring husband, like, oh my God, my heart is like crying. And you've also mentioned it a few times now, and I do want to get into that because it's so important to your story and who you are. So we know that. So okay, for everyone listening too, and if also like it's kind of a heavy episode, so think if you guys are watching or listening, like I hope it really transcends because I'm sure everyone, a lot of people also have been through similar situations. So I think it's so great to be vocal and for you to share your story. Thank you so much. And the next part, I know it'll be a little good. It's like sad story in there, and there's like the positive of your blog. So you did start a blog that you've been working on and your content and
Yeah.
and Instagram mostly right now, correct?
Yeah. So I hope to I want to branch out more but it's been like my dream to really like I wanted to create something that I could, that when I don't even know how to word this. I'm at a loss for words today, but basically something that I can leave behind, one day that's gonna cause like a ripple effect and is gonna help other people. Right now, my target audience is really females, because it's something that I can really speak heavily on and I can relate to and I can kind of speak about because obviously, hello. I have a vagina. So what better way to know than to have one? So I wanted to help other females, who have been through that heartbreak or have, I feel like I've been through enough in my life that there's a lot that I feel like I can be of use with and of help with. Um, I wanted to create something that, creates a safe space for females really everywhere that they could connect, even if it's not just connect with me, but, I want to engage my audience to talk on these platforms and to get to know other women who, have been through similar stuff or maybe are going through something right now that maybe if I'm not going through it, but, two women are in the comment section and they say, hey, I'm going through that, like DM me, and create a space where these women can connect and they can talk to one another and create that support system that like I wish I would have had, growing up, as far as that communication and knowing what is, feeling more normal, I guess is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. Is
And it's just incredible that you did like create this space and the honesty that you have on there and the your truth of it and just the fact that you want to spread this positivity to women and like other women to connect is so amazing. And also too for people that are listening, do you want to say what the blog is called or the profile? We'll
yeah.
it as well. It'll be tagged everywhere.
So it is the MoonChild Mama Truth. So everybody calls me the MoonChild because like I'm all about like being a total hippie and I just have like this sick obsession with moons and I'm a moonchild because I'm a Cancer. And so that's why, and then my regular Instagram, it's more personal and there's a slew of stuff on there, but that's just what is it? Wow, Moonchild. Oh my God, I almost forgot my own name. So you can follow me on either or, but really the Moonchild Mama Truths is just a huge blog that's going to have a ton of content, just like I said, for females to connect. There's going to be, my own life stories that I'm finally going to start talking about and coming forward with, because there was just a lot of, I would post things and I would take it off because I was too afraid of, well, if I post this, like what is my family going to think, and am I putting them on blast, and like are they going to, and I'm like, you know what, this is my truth and I'm going to speak it, and whoever likes it likes it, and if you don't, that's the beauty of social media. Unfollow, block, whatever, do what you got to do. You don't have
Yes.
to see it. So but really my intention that I'm trying to set forth is just being able to help, other women, and making sure that they always have somebody, like making sure that I'm always there so that nobody ever has to go through anything alone, even if I don't know you that well, just knowing that you can, all you have to do is press that message button and I'm going to help you. I mean, it may take me a little bit to get back to you, but like I'm going to get back to you, and like we're going to talk, and if I don't have the answer, I know a bunch of women that are really great that would be open to talking to you and steering you in their direction.
Mm.
So just having that connection and then just building other women up. There's so many women, even such as yourself, they have these beautiful blogs and, you're
Thank
doing your
you.
modeling and, being able to say like, hey, I'm going to shout out these women, these female owned profiles that are, dynamic and they're changing the world. So like go follow them because they're going to help contribute to, your inspiration and helping, you become a better person. And so that's my aim, and just to kind of blow it up from there and start doing, like, I love giveaways and, reviewing makeup and, all that girly stuff, like,
Mhm.
and, it doesn't always have to be heavy, but just like a slew of things that I think that are just helpful. So
Yeah, and so far it's off to a great start. Everyone listening and watching, you need to follow. We're gonna tag it, of course. And it is, I mean, it's so kind of full circle to your life because, like you said earlier, you have always just did like were friends with who you wanted to be friends with, did your own thing, like you grew up in a family, like you didn't tell secrets to your aunt and your grandma, like you, and so like your full circle of just everything you've been through to then come to this blog, it's like this is legit Morgan, like this is who she is and what she embodies. And I even love too that it's such a positive place for females because for someone like you said earlier, you were friends with a lot of guys because females during your time and your age like that you connected with were catty or jealous or had drama, And I agree too. And I had that similar situation. So then to know to come to a blog where like these females are positive and they want to raise each other up and they're not going to be petty towards my Instagram photo or like judge me that I'm in my underwear. Like,
Yeah.
so amazing. And I do also want to bring up that you really do shout out other women, and I think that's incredible, and I think that's super honest. And then you do post your truth, which brings me to the story that you recently posted about your abuse. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about it more in discussion, but I think just sharing a story like that is so open and honest. And for people that have been abused in, maybe same situation or different, like it shows that everyone else is not alone that could connect to that. And I think that what like reading that was like, wow, you feel a closeness to someone when they tell their truth. I'm like all emotional too because I'm like I read the post. So like for people that are watching and listening, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so recently I had posted one of the biggest events in my life that was it was really, really hard was I was 8 years old and a not I do want to clarify when I talked I had multiple neighborhood friends and I was worried that when I posted this people would think that it was my childhood friend Lee, and I was like that was not it. My childhood friend Lee is actually, I have to give her a shout out. Her and her mom were the ones that really helped me to come forward and tell my family about what had happened. There was another childhood friend that I had, and he was younger than me, and I was kind of in a way like we were like friends, but I also, because I was older, I used to babysit a lot, and then it became like it was more like we became family. And so his dad I just thought was definitely, looking back on it now, always inappropriate with me. And at one point, he had said to my grandma, like, oh, if, he's like, I just want to make sure, like, I'm not making Morgan uncomfortable, right? Like, he's like, whenever, like, he's like, I just look at her as my daughter and this and that. And looking back on it, like, I remember being like, I wanted to tell my grandma that sometimes he made me uncomfortable, but I had such a close relationship with the family that I was kind of like, I
Scared.
didn't want to make it weird, and I didn't want to, I thought maybe like, am I looking into it too much? And I'm like, as an 8 year old, like I shouldn't be like questioning anything or like feeling, you know what I'm saying? So that should have been a red flag. But his dad, for some reason or another, like he just took a liking to me, and I should have known that something was off about it. And I should have, I'm very big on following your gut feeling. Especially like we as women, we have very strong intuitions. It's a natural, it's that feminine, like that femininely, I don't even know if that's a word, that femininity that we have. I don't know. I'm like, I can't find the word for it, but it's like a divine gift that we have, and we have that strong intuition. And every time that I have not trusted my gut, it has led me down a very not good path. So like, I always am very big now on anytime I feel like my gut is trying to tell me something's wrong, I run the other way. Like, so I just felt like my gut every which way was like this, he's a little bit too comfortable with you. And he always said, well, you're like my daughter, and you're my daughter, and just always like, it was like he was just constantly saying that. And I felt like, looking back on it
People
now,
manipulation.
yeah, he was putting it into my head that, like, that whatever he did from that point on, it was a father daughter thing. This was normal. It was father daughter. So kind of going back to how we had talked about, growing close to your family, to your friend's family. He at first did treat me like his daughter. Like I would eat dinners over their house, and like I would babysit, his youngest little girl, and my friend, he was younger than me, but just making sure, like, because I was older, staying with them, and we'd watch movies and stuff. If they go over to the neighbor's house for like happy hour or drinks or whatever. And so like it was, to me, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a normal father daughter relationship. And then it like escalated to always like groping me or grabbing me and hanging all over me. And I was kind of like, I don't, I was like looking at like my other friends and their dads. I was like, I don't know, like just something felt weird about it. And
Yeah.
then, finally, like I had said earlier, he had said to my grandma at one point, you know, I hope I don't make Morgan uncomfortable. Like, is she okay? And I remember my grandma saying to me, it doesn't make you uncomfortable, right? Like everything's good. Like, and I said, no, everything's fine. And I just was like, everything's okay. And then I think he was looking for that green light,
Mm.
like, hey, checking with her family. Like there were things that he did, and I think he was trying to make sure he had that green light. Like, okay, she doesn't
She's
see
not
anything.
saying anything about me,
Yeah,
so.
and
Ooh.
yeah, so it was. There were so many more details than what I posted because Instagram only lets you post so much. Um, but that was that final, I think, final step that he took to really make sure that the night that he did what he did, that I was gonna not say anything. And so he was right. For a long time I didn't. Basically we were getting ready for Christmas. He had a habit of grooming me, which I now know is the correct term. Buying me gifts, and I was so into this. Okay, he's like a dad to me, so he's treating me like his daughter. He's spoiling me, and my grandparents spoiled me, so I didn't think anything different of it. And so he had a motorcycle, and he had this, like, I guess it's called, like they're part of like a club or whatever. So
Okay.
they would go on like runs and stuff, and I'm like, I don't, so they would
That was my
host.
life.
Yes. I'm like, I figured you would probably know better because I know you said your dad had, the motorcycle thing. So,
Yeah.
he would take me on his motorcycle a lot, and he used to do runs, and he had like this little like club, and they would do like Valentine's Day brunches or like, and stuff like that. So they had this Christmas dinner. And so I was there with, like I said, his kids, and we were Santa was pulled out like these like really cool gifts, like things that I was like so excited to get for Christmas. And I was like, oh my gosh, like these like elaborate gifts. I'm like, wow, that's like, in my head, I'm like, that's a lot of money, like, to be spending on
Yeah.
me. Like I felt kind of awkward because like I'm not his daughter. And
Yeah.
looking back on it now, there was multiple times that he did stuff like this, and he was definitely grooming me. And so that night, we had a really great night, and I was like so pumped for my new toys, and I was so excited. We watched Christmas movies, and then the neighbors' kids were also sleeping over, and
Oh,
so we're all sleeping in the living room, and I don't know what time it was. It was the middle of the night. They're all sleeping in their sleeping bags, and he came downstairs, and he did force himself on me, and it just was a really bad night. And I just remember, like I said in my post, like I just laid there, and I just thought, maybe if I pretend to be asleep, maybe if I pretend, if I just close my eyes and I just lay there, at some point he'll stop. And it didn't. And I just was, you just lay there, and you just are like, okay, maybe this is normal. Like in my head, I was rationalizing. I'm like, okay, this is what fathers do with their daughters. Like, you're 8 years old. Like I was 8 years old, and I'm like, you don't like, you don't know what's normal, like, but you know that something was wrong. And then I felt like this guilt while I was laying there, like, this is my fault. Like maybe like I led him on. Like maybe like this was something that like maybe if I said, I don't like it, or, good touch, bad touch, like I was old enough to know good touch, bad touch. And to me, I was like, this didn't make me feel good. And so, um,
but
after I think,
how wild, you're 8 years old, and this, like you said in your post, like 40 something year old man, like, oh my God. It's like, and like you said in your post, you were wearing like your Scooby-Doo pajamas, like you were not asking, like the, yeah, what that does to a, oh my God, like, I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh,
no, no, you're good. I mean, it blows my mind looking back on it, because I look at my god kids, and my godson, like he's 6 years old, and I'm like, that's not far off for how old I was when it happened. I'm like, it's only 2 years. And I'm like, I I would I would go ballistic. I would kill somebody if they ever hurt my nieces or my godchildren. Like I would go to jail. Like I'm like, I couldn't imagine. And to think that like I look at my god kids and I couldn't imagine doing anything to hurt them. Like,
Yeah.
and to me, I'm like, how do you look at it? Like in my head, I'm like, how do you look at a child and think that, sexually that's okay? Like that, to take that from them, and even an adult, like looking at somebody else and saying, I'm gonna strip them of all their trust. I'm gonna strip them of their faith in humanity. Like I'm going to take that from them without their permission. And so even more mind blowing is he had a little girl. Like, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
another thing I
crazy.
didn't put in the post is for the rest of my life from that point on, I remember always looking out my door at their house and wondering if, because I didn't say anything for 4 years, did he do the same thing to her? Like, and I always prayed, like I prayed and prayed. I was like, please, like just let it have just been me. Like if it was just me, I can live with that. But I remember feeling this immense guilt that like for 4 years I didn't say anything, and I'll never know if he ever did anything to her. And
Yeah.
I
I
don't
was
know.
gonna ask, so when you decided to finally like speak up about it, do you like, and also too, like post speaking up about it, did you have any interactions with the family? How was your experience of speaking up about your experience? Because I mean, right now in this day and age, the Me Too movement is huge, right? But there's still always the stigma, like, is the person lying, right? Like, how was your experience? Did everyone really like rally around you?
So, I want to say it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't a whole production. And a lot of that's my fault because even though I did tell my family at some point, I didn't tell them the details.
Hmm.
I gave them a very watered down generic version, like good touch, bad touch, and this is what happened. He did something bad, and then that was that. Like, it was, I I was 12 when I did tell them, and it was so weird how it happened because I was sleeping over at my friend Lee's house, and I felt I felt like trust with her mom, enough to it was eating me up. And I remember like I don't even know the word for it, like just like melancholy. Like I was just super just I felt weird about it, and I felt like I was holding this like a secret, like, and I felt dirty. Like I don't know, like there was just this weird feeling, and I just needed to get it off my chest. Like I had this guilty conscience, and I was just like I felt like I did something bad. And so I just wanted to talk to my friend Lee's mom about it. And so I talked to her and I said, listen, this is what happened. I told Lee first before anybody, and Lee was like, you have to tell my mom. Like, you have to, like, I was like, I can't tell her. And she was like, no, you gotta, like, it's okay. You can talk to my mom. She won't tell anybody. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I finally, like, I was having sleepover at Lee's house, and I finally told her mom, and her mom was like, listen, sweetie, like, she was so understanding about it, but she was also very concerned. And she was like, you need to tell your grandma. And she goes, and I feel like in a way, I knew that if I told Lee's mom it would force me to tell my family because it would put me in a position where if I didn't tell them, I knew that she was going to. And that's exactly what she said. She was like, either, I'm going to let you tell her, but if you don't, I have to.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
awesome that you had the support of her family.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. I was super close. That was like I said, my child. She was more my sister than anything. We were so close, and so when I did tell my grandma, it was so weird the way that it happened. But I had gotten really, really sick. I had a really bad virus, and I was sleeping on the living room floor. And I specifically remember I was having nightmares about, like, I was having fever dreams, but I was having nightmares about it. What happened,
Yeah.
and I would keep waking up and I was sweating and I was like so sick and in like this like fever state. Like I remember like I sat up and it was like probably midnight and my grandma was sitting in her chair and she was just watching TV, and I was like, I have to tell you something. And she was like, okay. And I told her, I was like, I said, he did something really bad. And she just was kind of like, how bad? And I was like, he did something bad. And she was just like, okay. Like she was like, my grandma was very calm, cool, and collected about a lot of stuff, but she was, she was very put together. I think that she kept it cool for me because she didn't want to
Yeah.
scare me and make me feel a certain way. And then I remember the next day, she, I think, talked to my aunt. I don't remember, honestly, it's been so long. This is a part that I don't remember. I don't remember if she told my aunt or if she called me in the kitchen to tell my aunt. And I remember we did stand in the kitchen. We had this conversation, and my aunt she was mom lion. She did not hold back on anything. And she was so, like, she stayed calm, cool, and collected. But I know my aunt. My aunt is the type of person that she doesn't care if you're 4 or 5. If you hurt me in any which way, she would fight a child on the playground. Like, she was like, this is my girl. Like, she protected me like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, her and my grandma, it killed them, like what happened. And because they loved me more than anything in this world, and they would never want anything to happen to me. And so I mean, I know that they prided themselves on their one job was protecting me from all of the stuff that happened with my mom. And then for this to happen and them feeling like they didn't protect me. And that's not the truth, because unfortunately, the one thing in life is you can't always protect the people that we love, and bad
Mhm.
things happen. And so it was just one of those things. And so we kind of, I was too scared for them to do anything, and I didn't want them to. And so I think my grandma thought for my healing it would be better if we moved past it. And that's what we did. We just kind of we I knew that I had gotten it off my chest. I felt better getting it off my chest and it being out there in the open, and they knew. And so that they never, because for a while there, for those 4 years, it was like he would still ask me to come over, and he would still invite me to things and and I'd be like, Grandma, I don't feel good, or Grandma, I don't want to do this, or I think I have a fever, and like just faking stuff because they didn't know. And my grandma would be like, go over, like, go, you know what I'm saying, like.
Yeah.
And so, it was one of those things where once it was off my chest, it was, I didn't have to go over there anymore. I didn't have
Okay.
to play coy and, pretend. And
Yeah.
so that was enough for me. But getting older now and realizing I'm like, you know, people like that, they need consequence. And there's no reason somebody should ever touch a child, or even an adult. Like, you don't, point blank period, don't put your hands where there's no consent,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like, and especially a child. And so I'm such a big advocate when it comes to sexual assault awareness, and especially during April, because it's we live in the society where we victim blame and we don't believe people. And unfortunately, I also get really frustrated because there's people out there that do lie, and they try and use it as, to their own advantage, and then it makes situations for people like
Real
me,
survivors.
survivors, not that we're not believed, and for the
Mhm.
people that it matters to. And so that's really frustrating.
It's really, I just realized too, it's April, and it's like how empowering we're talking about this in April. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it just, and
Honestly, the reason I posted so like late is
yeah.
because usually I post like April 1st. I have just been in the mom time warp, and I'm like, holy
Yeah.
crap. I was like, it's already April 6th. I'm like, what am I doing?
But what a way the universe works, because we've been like trying to like okay like making our schedules work, and it happens to work in April. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I'm just like, this just talking to you has been so like liberating, and it feels really good to also like.
It's so liberating to hear your story. Like, dude, just you shared so many stories that I'm like, oh my God, Morgan. But like yes, like this is like your truth, your story, and like as hard as it to like, you've endured it and I'm just hearing it. So it's like I can't even fathom what you've endured, but the fact that you're here to like share your story and then to create the blog that's like liberating to other women, like oh, I could cry. Like holy shit. Like some people would go through what you went through and like want like not be where you're at right now. And then so the fact that you went through all this, had to process all this, then to like find your beautiful husband, have a beautiful baby girl, make this beautiful message, like Oh my God, it's just so, and like, and also too, I knew you in high school. It's like it's just so beautiful. Like tragically, like I'm not like I'm so sad for what you went through, and my heart is for you. But the fact that your strength just persevered through everything, and like not everyone can say that they can do that.
It's a I feel like you have to either choose to sink or swim. And like I've always said, like you can't use your bad childhood as an excuse to be a shitty person. Because too many I've seen a lot of people choose that route. Choose to hate the world and to shut people out and be an ugly person because ugly was done to you. And like some people I get it, like their mental capacity. I mean, the human body can only take so much. So I get that some people physically can't handle it, and they turn to the bottle, they turn to drugs, and unfortunately like that always kills me when I see that happen because you lived enough of your life, you know having wrong done to you, and you've lived enough of your life in pain, that why would you want to continue that the rest of your life? Like every day is a new opportunity to change things and to make it better and to be a better person and to make other people's lives better, because unfortunately we don't realize that as human beings we have the power to create a ripple effect and like to do good to other people, and and when we do good to other people, when we make them feel good, they feel good enough to do good to other people, and it's a cycle. And when you're ugly to other people, it makes them angry, it makes them want to be ugly.
Yeah.
And so I kind of said, like, I don't want to be an ugly person. Like that's not who I want to be, and I don't want to make the world ugly. I don't want to contribute to the ugliness that there is. So it just became this thing of like, I'm gonna have days where I'm an ugly person, but I'm not gonna make that my life. And
Yeah.
so, I need to fix me, because if I don't fix me, I'm going to be the reason that this world is continuously shitty.
Yeah.
So, you
And
know.
that's so beautiful to have that mindset, honestly. Like so and it's so rare, I think. And I think the more people like you speak up and share their story, like other people come out of the closet and they're like, "Oh, like I'm okay to share my story." Like just reading that or even just listening to you and or watching this episode, like you don't know how many people you'll touch just by telling these different stories, and it's you have different stories for different situations, and maybe someone can't connect to this story but an hour ago they'll connect to that story, and it's like I'm just so grateful that you wanted to come on here and share your story, because the main reason for this podcast is to listen to people's stories, because you don't have the person without their story. And I think it's so important because you learn so much from all different walks of life. Like we might have been in the same Italian class way back when, but how would we ever know the lengths of life we've lived and then continue to live? And it's just so impactful to hear that. Like you've
Yeah.
overcome so much and been through some shit, and like look at you now. Like it's so wrong what happened. Like that man, like I hope he freaking burns in hell, and like if he's not already freaking dead. And I hope too that you like obviously you've processed these feelings, and I'm sure it's affected you throughout your life in different aspects, right? And then to like, in relationships, I'm sure like you mentioned earlier, like you had some tough relationships, and then thankfully you have the most beautiful husband now, so it's a happy ending, but it's a hard struggle to get there. And um, just to maybe wrap that portion up, did you have a moment where you were able to kind of like see him and tell him off, or it just you left it where it was left?
Um, there was just like it wasn't so much, I never really spoke to him again. It was just kind of, um I just saw him and it was like, I I don't hate you anymore. I don't fear you. I don't hate you. Um, you just are a sick individual. Like it just realizing that it takes somebody who is mentally unstable. It takes a person who just is like vile on the inside to do what he did. And then it was like he just continued with his life. And then, I kind of had to live with the after effects. And I realized that like I didn't want to carry his ugliness anymore. And so, when you hate somebody and when you you know are constantly you let them rent free space in your head. That's what my aunt always said. My aunt was like, when you carry that person's ugliness, like you're essentially letting them take up space in your head rent free. And so I was like, I don't, you did enough to me, and I don't want to like I'm not carrying you with me my entire life. So at some point, I
It's
had to
not cheap to be in this head.
no, no. And so it was like I had to drop that baggage off and I just had to let it go. And so it was like I just got to a point where like I didn't fear him. I had to see, I mean I still have to see him. Like he still lives across the street from my childhood home. So it's like I'll see him out there and working on his motorcycle or doing something with his car, and it's just kind of like, you know what? Like I don't care anymore. Like I don't know what you have going on in your life, and I pray every day that he was not like that with his own daughter. That's one thing that'll always stay in the back of my head is I'll always worry about her, um, and just hope that he was better to her than he was to me. And so I kind of was like, let me just move on from this. And because at some point, like if I don't heal from it, then I'm just be carrying it forever. And that was not a price I was willing to pay. So
Yeah. It's good to hear, like, of course, you'll never forget it. You've lived it. But it's also good to hear that you have piece of your life. Like, it's not controlling your life, which is really great to hear. There is so much, Morgan, that I want to, like, I could talk to you for hours, and we have so much shared experiences of like similarities, but like not exactly the same. And just I think there's so much more to learn from you. I would love to have you come back on, especially more like this was for everyone to get to know who you are. But I'd love to have you come back for another rad chat where we talk about your blog and just the process of being a mother and like more in depth of those. And so if you're down, I would love to have you back.
yeah, so under one condition though,
What?
that when I start like my little mini series on mine, that I we could flip the cameras and I
Oh,
do you.
girl, of course. I would be honored.
Okay. Okay, good.
Of course. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm flattered.
I'm really happy that we connected because, like I said, like we knew each other like at surface level, like in Italian class. And I mean, even though we were kind of living in the jungle at that point with that place was zoo.
Yeah.
Um, it was fun to get to talk to you today and just like
Yeah.
peel back layers and kind of get to know one another because there's a lot about you that I didn't know. So
Mm.
we do have, I feel like, a lot in common. So that was really
Mhm.
cool in
Yeah.
a
And
tragic, morbid way.
yeah,
It was cool.
it's crazy because I think it's probably where you've got in your life too. I think I was always super shy. I never wanted to talk about anything. I never shared. I just was like me, myself, and I. And then as I finally like found my voice, it was like, oh my God, I have to talk about it. Everyone needs to know. Like, but not in the way where I want people to feel bad for me. Like, I don't want pity or like, because it shows the strength, which is why I keep saying like, as tragic as the experiences you went through, like to me, your strength shows. And that's my biggest thing. Like, I just want people to know, like, you can, like, it'll get better. Just keep going. Cause, like, there's been so many dark times in everyone's lives that if you just keep going, the beauty of it, or like trying to find that magic, or trying to find like the moon child in you, like any little piece, it's like there's so much more than just living in that darkness. So, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. Please let everyone know again where they can find you and any last parting words you'd like to say before we have you come back for part 2.
Yes. So it is the Moonchild Mama Truths on Instagram. And I guess just my last words is just, life is tough, but I always say to people, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna have days where, life is gonna be a real swift kick in the ass, but it's how you pick your pieces up and how you move forward that matters. So just always making sure that no matter what life hits you with and how mad and how pessimistic you can be, always try and find, the bright side to things and move forward because like I said, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So just live in your life, live in your truth and stay true to, your authenticity identity and don't let anybody change you or try and mold you to their liking because we're all like a fingerprint. We're unique in our own type of way, and that's
Yes,
something that you can't
preach.
create that. So just be yourself.
Yes, and thank you so much again. I super appreciate your time. I know busy mothers out there. Thank you more time. And this was so incredible. Guys, stay tuned for part two where we're gonna come back. And also please check out her blog, follow her, post her, comment, like everything. We'll tag it. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so happy I got to talk to you, and
Me
we'll
too.
talk soon.
Of course, and we will plan part two. And guys, in the comments, leave what your thoughts and just know it's gonna get better.
Thanks, girl.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.